Welcome back to the channel. So recently I found this book of shadows from Charms that I made when I was 12 years old. I really had a green folder and a dream. So I decided to pick it back up 12 years later and complete the book. First things first, I wanted to leather bind the cover, so I bought this green PU leather sheet, which I'm just going to super glue to the folder. I did try to get off this triquetra that I made out of red card and stuck on when I was 12, but it's really stuck on there. But you know what, it's kind of sweet to know that there's still a piece of 12-year-old me's work under there. So then I cut the edges and folded them over and super glued them to give it a nice neat look from the outside. I did really try to make it neat on the inside, but the fabric just wasn't working with me. So the next day, once the glue had dried on the fabric, I decided to measure up some A3 paper so that I could really cover up those dodgy edges on the fabric. Once I was happy with the size, I then brewed a little tray of tea and tea stained the pages and popped them in the oven to dry them off. It didn't really come out the colour I wanted, and it was really wet when I tried to stick it down, but I was in a rush to get to work. We also had some tears and it just didn't look right when it dried, so I redid it off camera and it looks so much better. So when I was 12, I just printed the pages from Google Images, and for some reason I also decided to rip the edges. I think I thought it made it look a bit more ancient and used, but if you actually look at the book in the series, the pages don't have ripped edges and they are a lighter colour, so I'm thinking I might start from scratch. Don't worry, I am going to save these pages to remember the work that 12-year-old me started. So I found a website that has every single page from the Book of Shadows. I think a lot of the pages on this website are in order, but there are some pages I'm going to mix around a little bit just because I think there's some that look better together. Okay, let's get started on the first set of pages. So I downloaded them from that website and moved them over to Canva just because I feel like Canva is a bit easier to navigate using images than Word is, and then I sent them to print. Now that they were printed, I started tea staining them. So the way I did this was the dabbing method after soaking did not work with the A3 paper. But as you'll see here, the ink from the other side started to bleed, and I was really hoping it just looked severe because the paper was wet. But when I dried it with a hairdryer, it was still horribly obvious. I don't know how 12-year-old me originally did this. Maybe I just had a printer that's ink didn't bleed so easily, but I don't really have the money to buy a new printer, so I'll make it work. So after going off and having a bit of a mentee bee, I came back and decided to dip the tea bags in cold water and really squeeze them out so hardly any water was touching the paper, as I think that's why the ink bled so much. It did work out a lot better, but the pages aren't as much of a golden brown as I wanted them to be. So the next time I did it, I mixed coffee with tea bags to make it a bit more pigmented. I then took an old beauty blender and smudged brown eyeshadow into the edges of the paper to give them a more ancient look. After doing a few pages, I decided it was time to make the triquetra, and by that I mean my fiance 3D printed and primed it for me. I was then too scared to start painting it in case I did it wrong, so he started it off for me and I took over about halfway through. Once the paint dried, I just super glued it onto the cover and it looks amazing. I'm so happy with it. I then went back to staining the rest of the pages with the tea and coffee mixture and added the eyeshadow edging to each page. In the end, there were 140 double-sided pages, so in total 280 pages. And voila, that's the book completed.